So good evening again, everyone. This evening, we are exploring a theme that is timely and it's deeply personal to me, the importance of self-love, cultivating inner growth, healing, and resilience. And this, of course, is faith and friendship. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy this presentation. If you're managing chronic illness, injury, suffering from some kind of trauma, or you're caring for someone who is, your journey is beyond challenging. It is overwhelming, and oftentimes your journey is lonely. But in our community today, I think we can learn more about nurturing ourselves and our bodies, our spirits, and those nurturing ourselves is a source of strength. It's a vital source of strength. The goal today is not to change anyone's mind about the definition of self-love or its personal significance, or even your opinions on the concept itself. But what I want to do today is introduce ideas for us to just consider individually. Ideas that are rooted in religion, in philosophy, in psychology, and from others with greater expertise and knowledge than I have. Slide 2. Thank you, Annette. So, analogy. We are gardens in need of restoration. So on the first slide, there were two images, but they're at the bottom of this slide here. And at the top of these two images, I removed the background from the sign that says Natural Area Restoration in Progress. If we compare ourselves to a natural area or even to a garden, think about everything that grows there and think about all of its parts, right? Just as nature, though, sometimes suffers neglect or damage, our bodies, our minds, our emotions, our inner landscapes can be overgrown. Stress, negativity, emotional pain, politics, work, children, the demands of others, the demands of our own bodies as we struggle through whatever it is that we're struggling. Also, life is not just filled with the good things. It's not goodness, success, joy, love, companionship, happiness, fun. They're just issues, the illnesses, the injuries, the traumas. And we have to dedicate time and attention to ourselves if we want our gardens to thrive, if we want our natural areas to thrive. So all of the photos that you see in this presentation today, I took them and I use nature walking or nature bathing right here in Brooklyn as one of the things that I needed to do to nurture myself. The image at the bottom left with some leaves that are looking extra dry or even rotting, that was taken from a walk on a beach. And I love this photo because some of the leaves are so healthy and so green. And when I touched these leaves, they were thick and waxy and they felt strong. Like each leaf felt strong and powerful, except the leaves that were withering that you could see that they're kind of eaten away and brown. And you think about, is it too much sun? Is it too much salt in the sand? Is it that they're not getting enough water? They're certainly getting enough light by the seaside, but what exactly was it that's destroying them? So we're going to go to the next slide. And so there are many perspectives on self-love, right? There are religious and spiritual ones. There's atheism and stoicism. They have their own views on what that might be. They're the philosophical and the psychological. I'm not going to talk about all the ones that I researched, but I will say self-love is not confined to like one tradition or one perspective. Whether it's religion or philosophy, our understanding of self-love spans a vast range. And it reminds us ultimately, like collectively, all of these perspectives remind us that our worth is important. We individually, we're important, and we must nurture ourselves just like we nurture that garden to thrive. So Christianity, for example, frames self-love in relation to God, in relation to divine creation and moral responsibility. Christianity says, there's a difference between egocentric love, which it condemns and which leans more towards narcissism, and correct relational self-regard that deepens our capacity to love others. Mark 12, verse 31 says, love your neighbor as yourself. And I love that verse because it implies that if I don't love me first, I can't love others. Self-love is foundational to loving others. In Buddhism, mindfulness and compassionate self-care is emphasized. It's self-love is not to boost your ego and to feel good about yourself, but it's about treating your body and your mind to alleviate suffering and create peace. So there's this quote attributed to Buddha. It says, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve love and affection. So I'm going to repeat that. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. And for me, that emphasizes that self-love is critical. It's universal, and it's a right for all of us here today and anybody on this earth. Hinduism also recognizes self-love and talks about a divine spark called Atman, which in each individual. But without that Atman, without that individual self-love, you cannot connect to anybody else. So you need the self-love to connect with the universal or the collective whole, all of humanity. I looked up Sikhism, I looked up other things, but I'm going to kind of skip over some of that right now. I will share, we can go to the next slide, Annette. So here are three perspectives. The one that I shared before, love your neighbor as yourself. Then from Buddha, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. And then the third one, which I can't see right now because I'm blocking it. When I accept myself, I am freed from the burden of needing you to accept me. And I thought that's really important. I know in my life, and maybe it's true for you too, listening or right here today, that you've had some experiences where you're pouring yourself out, pouring yourself out, pouring yourself out, and caring for others. And the care for yourself is absent. Even if you express how much you need care, what kind of care you need, or what would be meaningful or encouraging to you, maybe you don't get that care in return. So we are going to go to the next slide. So what are the implications for us, the ethical and human implications? Oscar Wilde humorously said or wrote or observed, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. I can't be Annette. I can't be Gloria. I can't be Beverly. I can't be Crystal. I can't be anybody here. I can only be me. But if I can only be me, I need to understand myself, and I need to take care of me, and I need to celebrate me as I am. So whether I'm the yellow sunflower on this slide that's blossoming and strong and holding itself upright facing the sun, and if you look really closely, there's a bee feeding on it, or if I'm the blue flowers, or if I'm the pink rose, or if I'm the sunflower that's hanging its head down, it's lost many of its petals. Whoever I am, I have to be me in whatever stage I am in life, whatever my situation might be, how much nurturing I'm getting or not getting, I have to take care of me. And as Brené Brown says, we can only love others as much as we love ourselves. Next slide. Why do we need self-love? And this is the case for restoration. So I'm going to take a minute and just talk about these photos again. Because on my walks, I just look, and whatever I see that captivates me, it's what I take a photo of. And I practice something now called contemplative photography. So it's about being mindful in the moment. I see something, it catches my eye, I take a picture. But then I go back and I study the photo. What is this photo speaking to me? What is it teaching me? It caught a moment in time, and it froze that moment for me so that I could go back and really study it. So the photo on the top is from the Marine Park Salt Marsh area, between the Salt Marsh actually and the Marine Park Golf Course, where there's been a lot of wildfires over the winter and a lot of fallen trees as a result. And so I think of illness, chronic illness, caregiving, caregiver responsibilities, the demands of us for work, or maybe even we just had a grandbaby and we're going to provide extra care for that baby. Everything is taking something from us. And if we become too depleted, we can become burnt out, we can fall. The photo on the bottom left corner was taken in Florida, again on a walk, and I was captivated by a whole group of trees. They were so thick and healthy and green and beautiful. But this one particular tree in the midst of all the trees was eaten away. And if you look carefully, you could see that worm that's in there, and it's being eaten away by this living organism that's feeding on it. The tree is huge, and half of the tree was eaten away. Now, I don't know how many of these creatures are in there eating away at the tree. It probably isn't just one. But the point is, if a tree could be fallen by something small, how much does illness take from us? How much does injury take from us? How much does constant work take from us if we're not getting enough sleep, enough rest? And so back to that idea of we are natural areas, restoration in progress. Self-love means tending our garden, weeding, tilling the soil, giving ourselves enough water, providing adequate sunlight, enough nutrition so that we can survive and that we can be well. When we're facing the uncertainty of chronic illness or the emotional toll of caregiving, for example, it's easy to neglect our personal gardens, our natural areas. But with practice, consistency, and honoring our religious and spiritual beliefs and ourselves, I think we can discover how small intentional acts of care can restore our inner lives. Next slide, please. Excuse my voice. So let's reframe self-love. Well, not reframe self-love, forgive me. Let's reframe self and love. And self and love together equals self-love. So when we think of the self and we think of, usually when we think of ourselves as one being, an entity. And we just say, okay, I'm Michelle. Susie might say, I'm Susie. Johnny might say, I'm Johnny. And we just think of, well, what do we need as a whole? But the truth is, even though we are whole, we have one form, just like the tree in this image. The fact is that we are made up of many parts: our roots, our trunks, our branches, our smaller branches, our leaves, right? We have all these parts, and none of them are fixed, because with time, with experience, every second of life, we are constantly changing, just like our environment around us is constantly changing. So then what does that mean for love? Then perhaps love is a gentle acceptance of each part of ourselves. And then together, perhaps self-love really means what we know to be true: the daily small acts of care that we need so that we can thrive. If we reimagine love as gentle acceptance and acknowledgement of whatever part of us might be hurting or might be tired, then we're not talking about the whole body being flawless or the whole body being like an Olympus, super strong and super capable. We're thinking about what part of ourselves is hurting at the moment and how can we care for that part? How can we compassionately recognize that part and tend to it? And we will go to the next slide. So a new perspective on self-love. I found a psychologist, Dr. Sophia Godkin, AKA the happiness doctor. And she talked about this idea of the many parts of us. And so according to Dr. Godkin, we should embrace the many. If we see ourselves as collectives of diverse, ever-changing parts, we have to, in mindfulness, recognize those parts are changing in response to stimuli, in response to what's happening, in response to what we're thinking about, what we're feeling. And our in the moment focus shifts from, can I love myself, all of me? Or to, can I love this part of me right now? Suppose I'm angry. Suppose I am feeling an emotion like hate. Suppose I am so burnt out, I am feeling resentful. Suppose I am really critical of myself and judging myself because I feel I'm not doing enough and I should do more and I should do better, right? These are all parts of our lives. And so can we shift from, can I love myself, all of this, to can I love this part of me now, whatever that part is? And if I can welcome all of my facets, I can honor my vulnerabilities, I can honor my weaknesses, I can listen to my inner critic, and I can still choose to accept and love and appreciate and embrace myself. And so in that, there is daily compassion, the small mindful acts of self-care that nurtures each part of us. So I recently went to Brooklyn Park. I forget the name of it, but downtown Brooklyn. So I went down there and I've been writing about that. But I saw this man-made waterfall under the Brooklyn Bridge. And the moment I took the photo, I saw the photo pop up on my phone, right, on the screen. And I saw the image of it frozen and I was spellbound. I mean, the water looks like a transparent sheet of ice, and the droplets that you can see, they're like shimmering gems or diamonds or something. And I was mesmerized by the beauty of the garden itself. But this photo in particular became a really powerful lesson on focusing in on the present moment. And it reminded me that I need to pay attention to my current needs. And perhaps, and I didn't think that I would say this, but when I was walking through the Brooklyn Bridge Park, I remember the name now. So as I was walking through the Brooklyn Bridge Park and seeing how beautiful it was, I thought of my two sons who weren't with me. I was taking a solitary walk, as I often do. And I was just mesmerized by how beautiful this whole area was, and that people, community would come together in such a powerful way over a long period of time to demand that we build this park rather than we build high rises and condos for whomever. Let's preserve the natural environment. And suddenly, sadness overwhelmed me. And I thought of my sons, and I thought of their health, and I thought of their limitations, and I thought of the medicines that they have to take every day, and that if they don't take, what quality of life they would have. And even with the medicines, how much they struggle to care for themselves, even as adults. And how much for me as a mother, I feel their pain and their suffering, even though I'm not in their shoes. And I felt sad, one, because they weren't with me. They're struggling in the way I just described it to you. And they weren't there in that moment to share this beauty with me. And so, in a way, when I got to this little waterfall and I got to this photo, from now on, whenever I look at this photo, I have a tangible memory of my experiences, of my thoughts, of my feelings, of my cares, and of what I was doing to nurture myself that brought back the pain that I'm trying to nurture myself so I could deal with. Yet, recognizing the pain is part of self-love. So if I embrace the pain, then I can be stronger to continue doing whatever it is I need to do. And so we're going to move to the next slide. So part of self-love is setting boundaries. We have to set healthy limits for ourselves. You think of a road, a highway, there are boundaries, right? You're in the left lane, you're in the right lane, you're in the fast lane, you're in the slow lane. There are boundaries with lights that you have to stop, all the street, all the traffic signs that you have to obey, all the traffic rules that you have to obey. When I go for a walk in Marine Park, in the top left corner here, you see a pathway in Marine Park and two people in hats. There are boundaries to the path. Beyond the boundaries, I cannot walk because that is natural habitat being protected. In the top right corner, a view from a plane, I think it was over North Carolina. I studied the rivers. I studied the topography of the land. And I look at these rivers flowing. They need the boundary of the earth to keep flowing in the directions that they're flowing, whether it's straight, whether it's curved, whether it's a rapid movement or not. In the bottom right corner, there's a waterfall, right? That one was, I think, in Pennsylvania. And if the earth drops off suddenly, if there's a steep gradient, the speed of the water flowing downward is going to increase. And then if the earth drops off suddenly, it's going to become a waterfall. But it could also just be rapids that we're bouncing into boulders. And then in the bottom left corner, that one was taken in Miami. And I looked at the bridge and I thought of the boundaries. And we need the boundary of the bridge. We need the elevation of the bridge to be able to walk out and to see the whole Atlantic Ocean. We need the rocks in this image to protect the land so against the erosion of the sea. We need the channel. I am not sure why, but we need the channel, right? And then we still need the sea, but the sea itself is bounded by the shoreline of the earth. So when we can see all of our boundaries and when we can exercise our boundaries, we find that we have clarity, we find that we have safety, and part of that is saying an empowered no. Many times we have to say no, but oftentimes we are trained to think that we must always say yes. And we have to really learn to not feel guilty saying no so that we can take care of ourselves. And so maybe you could think about what's one area in your life or what areas of your life might you need to say no to, or you might need to really look at what are your boundaries and how much what can you change to engage in better self-care? And the practice of self-care are just those small acts or those decisive no's, and sometimes the decisive yeses that allow you to affirm your self-worth, that allow me to affirm my self-worth. And we can go to the next slide. So why do we need signs that we need boundaries? I love this rock, also in Marine Park. I do not know who painted this face on this rock, but I keep a few photos of it in my phone because it just has that sad look or that tired look. So whenever I start feeling overwhelmed, whenever I feel burned out, whenever I feel hopeless, whenever I just feel that the breath in my body is changing and feel the heaviness of my breathing, I know that I need to engage a boundary. If I am engaging in negative self-talk or I am not showing myself compassion, if I'm struggling in a relationship, whether it's one at work or one at home, and I feel in some way that a boundary has been crossed or I am injured in some way, then I'm having a wake-up call that I need to enact some kind of boundary to get back my self-care. And the thing about it is that when we have severe injury, severe illness, chronic illness, invisible illness, when we have trauma, when we're dealing with grief, we need to have our boundaries, but it is so much harder to step into those boundaries, to activate those boundaries, to say no, because we are already stretched, we're already burnt, we're already hurting. And it's harder then to enact that. But signs that we need boundaries, always. Because even if we're not sick, if we're not tired, if we're not burnt out, we need to self-care. So I wanted to add that always. And we can go to the next slide. So self-love and restoration practices, I'm not going to stay here too long because we know what these practices are, and they're different for all of us. Whether it's mindfulness, prayer, meditation, affirmations, journaling, for me, solitude is a big part of self-care. Whether it's a reflection on our personal achievements, our lives, exercise, nutrition, sleep. In one of our last meetings, we had a hearty debate about discipline and how much discipline comes into self-care and self-love. And some people might define self-love as just that act of discipline in terms of what they do for themselves. But it varies for all of us. And we need to set and maintain our boundaries. I'm going to reiterate here that we need to learn to say no. I'm still learning to say no. I am not even going to lie to you. And we need to create personal relationships and rituals that reinforce our self-worth. And we're going to go to the next slide. And this is our last slide. So integrating restoration into community life. That is what we're doing here in this meeting. So all of us who are here today, we've come together. It doesn't matter what our faiths are. It doesn't matter how well we know each other, if we've met each other in person or not, but we're coming together with solidarity, right? We're extending self-love beyond ourselves to the community, and we're forming the community here in our online meeting space. We also think about, as we integrate restoration into the community, moving from self-love to other love, we think about the power of shared understanding, acceptance, renewal, mutual support, and healing. And this is the space for that. And how do we do that? We do that by having open and nurturing discussions. So I do want to say thank you to all of you for just joining in and listening to the presentation.